Jake Martinez wiped the sweat from his forehead as he set up his violin case on the busy street corner. The twin suns of New Geneva cast strange purple shadows across the colony world's main plaza. Humans, aliens, and various species moved to the marketplace like a river of different colors and shapes. He had been playing music on street corners for 3 years now, ever since he arrived on this distant world. Earth felt like a memory from another life. Here on New Geneva, nobody cared about his past or his family's money troubles back home. All that mattered was the music he could make with his old violin. Jake pulled his instrument from its worn case and checked the strings. The wood was scratched and dented from years of travel, but it still sang beautifully when he played. He placed a few coins in the open case to encourage tips and took a deep breath. The first notes of Dance Monkey flowed from his violin like liquid gold. He had heard the original song by Tones and I countless times on Earth, but his violin version was something special. The melody danced through the air, mixing sadness and joy in a way that made people stop walking and listen. A group of human colonists gathered first, smiling and dropping credits into his case. Some of them sang along quietly, remembering the words from the old song. Jake closed his eyes and let the music carry him away from a hot street and the smell of alien food vendors. When he opened his eyes again, something had changed. Standing at the edge of the human crowd were 3 tall, gray figures. Jake had seen their kind before, but never up close. The Valkyrie were known throughout the galaxy for their cold logic and mathematical minds. They never showed emotions or interest in art. Yet, here they were, watching him play. Their large black eyes followed every movement of his bow across the strings. One of them tilted its head like a confused bird. Another stepped closer, its long fingers moving slightly as if trying to count something in the music. Jake kept playing, but his heart started beating faster. More aliens began to gather. Blue-skinned Zephyrians floated closer on their anti-gravity belts. A group of crystal beings called Resonance stood perfectly still, their bodies glowing softly. Even a few of the feared Kraxan warriors had stopped their patrol to listen. The violin sang louder now, filling the entire plaza with its voice. Jake had never seen so many different species in one place, all focused on his music. The human crowd had grown too, but they seemed less important now compared to aliens who looked like they had never heard anything like this before. A Valkyrie female stepped forward from the group. She was taller than the others and wore robes that marked her as someone important. Her black eyes studied Jake's face as he played, then looked down at his hands moving on the violin. The song reached its peak, and Jake poured all his emotion into the final notes. The melody soared high, then dropped low, then climbed again like a bird learning to fly. When the last note faded into silence, the entire plaza was quiet. Then something amazing happened. The Valkyrie began to make soft clicking sounds with their throats. Jake had read that this was how they showed approval, but no human had ever heard them do this for music before. The Zephyrians spun in slow circles, their blue skin changing to purple and gold. The resonance hummed in harmony, creating bell-like tones that echoed off the buildings. Even the Kraxan warriors touched their armored chests in what Jake recognized as a gesture of respect. Credits and strange alien coins rained into his violin case. But Jake barely noticed the money. He was staring at the faces around him, seeing wonder and confusion, and something that looked almost like hunger. These beings had traveled across the galaxy, built great ships and conquered worlds, but they were looking at him like he had just shown them fire for the first time. Captain Lisa Brooks pushed through the crowd, her Earth Defense Force uniform making people step aside. She was the highest-ranking human official on New Geneva, and Jake had seen her picture in the local news feeds. Her face was serious as she approached him. "Mr. Martinez," she said quietly, "I think we need to talk. What just happened here has never happened before in recorded galactic history, and I have a feeling this is just the beginning." Captain Lisa Brooks led Jake Martinez to a quiet coffee shop 3 blocks away from the plaza. The alien crowds had slowly moved away, but Jake could still see some of them watching from a distance. The tall Valkyrie female who had stepped forward during the performance followed them but stayed across the street. "Who is she?" Jake asked, nodding toward the gray figure. Lisa looked over and her face grew serious. "That's Elder Zethkar. She's one of the most powerful beings in this sector of space. The fact that she's still here is both amazing and terrifying. They sat at a corner table where Lisa could watch the street. She ordered 2 coffees and waited until the human server left before speaking again. Jake, do you understand what happened back there? In 300 years of contact with alien species, we've never seen anything like that. The Valkyrie don't respond to art. They don't respond to music. They barely respond to emotions at all. Jake wrapped his hands around his warm coffee cup. I just played a song. The same song I played hundreds of times. But not to them, Lisa said. The Valkyrie have studied human culture for decades. They've analyzed our books, our movies, our paintings. They understand them as data, but they never feel anything from them. Today was different. Through the window, Jake watched Elder Zethkar talking to 2 other Valkyrie who had appeared from nowhere. Their long fingers moved in quick patterns as they communicated in their sign language. What are they saying? Jake asked. Lisa pulled out a small device and pointed it toward the aliens. The translator hummed softly as it picked up their conversation. They're discussing mathematical patterns, Lisa said, frowning. But not normal ones. They're talking about emotional mathematics, pattern structures that affect consciousness. They think your music follows rules they don't understand. The coffee shop door chimed, and Elder Zethkar walked inside. Every human in the place stopped talking and stared. The Valkyrie were not known for socializing with other species. She moved between the tables with fluid grace and stopped next to Jake. "Human musician," she said in perfect English, though her voice sounded like wind through metal pipes. "I am Elder Zethkar of the Valkyrie Science Council. I must speak with you." Lisa started to stand, but the elder raised one long hand. "Captain Brooks, your presence is also required. What we discuss affects all humans in this sector." Elder Zethkar sat down in the empty chair, her tall frame making the furniture look like it was made for children. Other humans in the coffee shop pretended to read their tablets, while obviously listening to every word. "Your musical performance has created a situation," the elder began. "For the first time in our species' recorded history, we experience what you call emotion through sound patterns. This should not be possible." Jake leaned forward. "Why not?" "Because emotions are biological responses created by evolutionary pressures. Humans evolved on Earth with specific sounds that triggered survival responses. Fear from predator calls, joy from mating songs, sadness from lost cries. We evolved on a different world with different pressures. Your emotions should mean nothing to us." Lisa set down her coffee cup, but they did mean something. "Yes," Elder Zethkar said, and for the first time her voice carried something that sounded like wonder. "When you played your instrument, I felt something I have no words for. Colors appeared in my mind. My body wanted to move in patterns I had never considered. Most disturbing of all, I felt what I can only describe as longing." The coffee shop had gone completely silent. Even the machine behind the counter had stopped humming. "The council has been in emergency session since your performance ended," Elder Zethkar continued. "We have analyzed every recording we could find of human music. The effect is consistent across all forms, but your violin playing was the strongest response we have measured." She turned her large black eyes to Jake. "We require your assistance. The Grand Assembly of Species meets in 30 standard days on Nexus Prime. For the first time, the Council wishes to understand this phenomenon you call music. We formally request that you perform before the Assembly." Jake's mouth fell open. The Grand Assembly was where the major species of the galaxy made decisions about war, peace, and trade. No human had ever been asked to perform there. "What exactly are you asking?" Lisa said carefully. Elder Zethkar stood up, her robes flowing around her like water. "We are asking this human to teach the galaxy about the mathematics of emotion, to show 47 species what we experience today, to help us understand why sound patterns can affect consciousness across evolutionary barriers." She looked down at Jake. "You may be the key to understanding something fundamental about the nature of awareness itself. Will you come with us to Nexus Prime?" The transport ship Harmony was bigger than any vessel Jake had ever seen. Its white hull stretched for miles, with docking bays that could hold entire city blocks. Commander Alex Stone met them at the boarding ramp, his Earth Defense Force uniform crisp and clean. "Mr. Martinez," Commander Stone said, shaking Jake's hand. "I'll be your escort and protection during this journey. What you're doing is important enough that Earth Command assigned their best security team to keep you safe." Jake looked around at the massive ship's interior. Aliens of dozens of species walked through the corridors alongside humans. The air smelled like ozone and something sweet he couldn't identify. Protection from what? Jake asked. "Not everyone in the galaxy thinks human culture should spread." Commander Stone replied, "Some species see influence as a threat. They'd rather stop you before you reach Nexus Prime." They walked through long hallways lined with windows, showing the stars outside. Jake carried his violin case close to his chest, suddenly aware of how important the old instrument had become. "Commander!" A voice called from behind them. A woman in a white lab coat caught up to their group. She was young, maybe 30, with bright green eyes and brown hair pulled back in a ponytail. "Dr. Sophie Clark," she said, extending her hand to Jake. "I'm a xenobiologist. I study how different alien species think and feel. I've been researching what happened to you on New Geneva." They entered a large room filled with strange equipment. Screens showed brain scans, sound wave patterns, and complex mathematical formulas that hurt Jake's head to look at. "I've been studying alien neuroresponses to human art for 5 years," Dr. Clark said, "but I've never seen anything like what you did to the Valkyrie. Look at this." She pointed to a screen showing 2 brain scans side by side. One was gray and quiet, with only small sparks of activity. The other was bright with colors and flashing patterns. "The first scan is a normal Valkyrie brain," she explained. "Very logical, very controlled. The second scan was taken while Elder Zethkar listened to a recording of your violin playing. Her brain lit up like a Christmas tree." Jake stared at the colorful patterns on the screen. "What does that mean?" "It means your music activated parts of her brain that have never been used before. Parts that we didn't even know existed in Valkyrie biology." Dr. Clark pulled up more screens showing different alien species. "The Zephyrians experience something called synesthesia when they hear human music. They see colors and shapes that match the sounds. For them, your violin playing probably looked like dancing lights." Another screen showed the crystal-like resonance. These beings actually vibrate in harmony with musical frequencies. When you played, their entire bodies became musical instruments. They were singing along without even knowing it. Commander Stone watched the door while Dr. Clark continued her explanation. "The strangest response came from the deep current species. They're aquatic beings who communicate through sonar clicks. But when they heard your music, they started making sounds they'd never made before. Sound that seemed to carry emotions." Jake sat down in a chair, feeling overwhelmed. "I don't understand any of this. I just play songs I like." "That's exactly why it works," Dr. Clark said excitedly. "You're not trying to manipulate anyone or send hidden messages. You're just expressing pure human emotion through sound. And somehow, that emotion translates across species barriers." She pulled up one final screen, showing a map of known space. Red dots marked different star systems. "Word of your performance has spread faster than we expected. These red dots show places where aliens have requested copies of human music. Some of them are species we've never had contact with before." Commander Stone moved closer to the map. "That's over 200 star systems in less than a week." "The really interesting part," Dr. Clark continued, "is that each species responds differently, but they all respond. The warlike Kraxan become peaceful. The isolated whisper folk have started trying to communicate with other species. Even the machine-like constructors have begun creating art for the first time in their history." Jake looked out the window at the stars rushing past. Somewhere out there, aliens he'd never met were listening to his music and feeling things they'd never felt before. "Dr. Clark," he said quietly, "what happens when we reach Nexus Prime? What if the performance doesn't work the same way with so many different species watching?" She smiled and touched his shoulder. "Then we'll have learned something important about the universe. But Jake, I think you're going to change the galaxy forever. Your violin isn't just making music anymore. It's building bridges between worlds that have never understood each other. The ship hummed around them as they traveled deeper into space, carrying Jake toward a destiny none of them could fully imagine. Nexus Prime was unlike anything Jake had ever imagined. The planet's surface was covered with one massive city that stretched from pole to pole. Buildings reached up into clouds like metal mountains, and flying vehicles moved between them like schools of fish. The Grand Assembly Amphitheater sat at the planet's center, like a giant bowl carved from black stone. It could hold 1,000,000 beings, and today it was completely full. Jake stood backstage, looking through a small window at the incredible sight. 47 different species filled the seats. The tall gray Valkyries sat in perfect rows. Blue Zephyrians floated above their assigned sections. Crystal Resonants stood like living statues along the walls. Massive Kraxan warriors in battle armor occupied an entire level. "I can't do this," Jake whispered, clutching his violin case. Commander Stone put a hand on his shoulder. "Yes, you can. You've done it before." That was one street corner with maybe 50 people. "This is 1,000,000 aliens who could destroy Earth if they don't like my music." Dr. Clark joined them at the window. "Jake, look at their faces. Do you see fear? Anger?" Jake looked closer at the crowd. The aliens were talking quietly among themselves, but their body language seemed calm. Some even looked excited. "They're curious," Dr. Clark continued. "Every single one of these species has heard recordings of your music by now. They came here because they want to understand what they felt when they listened." Ambassador Helen Carter approached their group. She was Earth's highest-ranking diplomat, a woman in her 50s with silver hair and kind eyes. "The assembly is ready," she said. "Jake, I want you to know that no matter what happens out there, you've already made history. First contact with 3 new species happened because they heard your music and wanted to meet humans. A tall alien with 4 arms and skin, like polished metal, walked over to them. Jake recognized him as Speaker Vorth, who ran the assembly meetings. "Human musician," Speaker Vorth said in a voice like grinding gears. "The assembly waits. Are you prepared?" Jake took a deep breath and nodded. He followed Speaker Vorth onto the massive stage. The amphitheater fell silent as 1,000,000 eyes, sensors, and other organs focused on the small human carrying an old violin case. The stage was bare except for a simple chair and a microphone. Jake set up his music stand and opened his violin case. His hands shook as he lifted the instrument and bowed. He looked out at the sea of alien faces. In the front row, Elder Zethkar sat perfectly still, her black eyes reflecting the stage lights. Next to her, a group of Zephyrians glowed with soft blue light. Across the amphitheater, Kraxan warriors had set down their weapons. Jake closed his eyes and began to play. The first notes of Dance Monkey floated across the silent amphitheater. His violin sang the melody that had started everything, but this time it sounded different. The massive space gave the music room to breathe and grow. Within seconds, the effect began. The Valkyrie in the front rows started swaying slightly, their rigid bodies moving for the first time in ways that weren't purely logical. The Zephyrians began changing colors, their blue skin shifting through purple, gold, and silver as the music touched their minds. But it was the resonance who created the most amazing sight. The crystal beings started glowing brighter, and then they began to hum. Their voices joined Jake's violin in perfect harmony, creating sound that had never existed before in the universe. The Kraxan warriors, feared throughout the galaxy for their violence, began to remove their helmets. Underneath, their faces showed expressions Jake had never seen on their species. Some of them were crying. As Jake played, he opened his eyes and saw the miracle happening around him. Species that had been enemies for centuries were moving closer together. The aquatic deep current beings were making musical sounds that blended with the resonance humming. Even the machine-like constructors were flashing lights in rhythm with the music. The song built to its peak, and Jake poured all his heart into the violin. He thought about his home on Earth, his journey to New Geneva, the moment he first saw wonder in Elder Zethkar's eyes. He played for every being in the amphitheater, hoping they could feel what he felt. When the final note faded, the silence lasted for 10 full seconds. Then something unprecedented happened in the history of the Grand Assembly. Every single species began showing approval in their own way. The Valkyrie clicked their throats. The Zephyrians spun in circles. The resonants chimed like bells. The Kraxan warriors beat their chests in rhythm. But most amazing of all, they began to harmonize together, creating a symphony of 47 different species, all expressing the same emotion at the same time. Jake stood on the stage, tears running down his face, as he realized he had just witnessed the birth of something beautiful and new in the galaxy. The meeting room deep inside the assembly building was filled with beings Jake had only seen in pictures. Scientists, philosophers, and leaders from dozens of worlds sat around a curved table that seemed to go on forever. Jake felt small in his simple clothes, surrounded by such important figures. Elder Zethkar spoke first, her metallic voice carrying easily through the large space. The performance has raised questions that challenge everything we thought we knew about consciousness and emotion. A floating jellyfish-like creature named Dr. Quilm pulsed with soft lights as it spoke. My species has studied the phenomenon for 6 standard days. We have never encountered anything that affects our neural patterns the way human music does. Jake sat between Dr. Clark and Ambassador Carter, still holding his violin case. He hadn't expected to be part of this scientific discussion, but apparently his opinion mattered now. The most puzzling aspect, continued a robot like being called Unit 7745, is that the emotional response appears to be universal. Our species evolved on different worlds, under different conditions, with different survival needs. Yet we all feel something when humans make music. Dr. Ray Foster, a tall man with gray hair, leaned forward. He was Earth's top expert on alien psychology and had arrived on Nexus Prime just hours after Jake's performance. I believe, Dr. Foster said, that we're seeing evidence of something deeper than evolution. Music might touch a part of consciousness that exists beyond biology. The room fell quiet. Several aliens made sounds that Jake was learning meant surprise or disagreement. A creature that looked like a walking tree spoke in a voice like rustling leaves. Dr. Foster, consciousness is created by brain structures. Different brains should create different types of consciousness. That's what we all believed, Dr. Foster replied. But Jake's music suggests consciousness might have universal patterns. Music could be a language that speaks directly to awareness itself, regardless of what kind of brain is doing the thinking. Elder Zethkar turned her large black eyes to Jake. Human musician, you have been silent. What is your understanding of this phenomenon? Jake felt dozens of alien eyes focusing on him. He cleared his throat nervously. I don't understand the science, he said honestly, but I can tell you what it feels like when I play. I'm not thinking about different species or brain types. I'm just trying to share something beautiful. He opened his violin case and lifted out his instrument. Several aliens leaned forward with interest. When I played Dance Monkey on New Geneva, I wasn't trying to communicate with you, he said to Elder Zethkar. I was just feeling the music and letting it flow through me. Maybe that's why it works. I'm not trying to control or manipulate. I'm just being honest. A small creature with 6 legs and feathers spoke up. This honesty you described, can you explain it better? Jake thought for a moment. It's like showing your true feelings without being afraid. When I play, I'm not pretending to be someone else. I'm not hiding my sadness or my joy. The music carries whatever I'm really feeling at that moment. Dr. Clark pulled out her tablet and showed a series of brain scans to the group. We've been monitoring Jake during the performances. His neural activity is completely open. No defensive patterns, no deception markers. His brain is in a state of total emotional honesty. And somehow, added Dr. Foster, that honesty translates across species barriers. When Jake plays, he's not just making sounds. He's sharing his inner experience in its purest form. Unit 7745's lights flashed in what Jake was learning meant deep thought. This suggests that inner experience is common elements across all conscious beings. Music could be a direct transmission of consciousness itself. The floating Dr. Quilm Pulsebrighter. We have been studying human music transmissions for months. The effect is strongest with live performance, moderate with high-quality recordings, and weak with compressed digital files. This supports the consciousness transmission theory. Elder Zethkar stood up, her tall form making everyone else look small. The implications are staggering. If consciousness has universal patterns, then all aware beings share something fundamental. We are not as different as we believed. She looked around the room at the gathered aliens. This discovery changes our understanding of what it means to be alive and thinking. It suggests that consciousness itself might be the true universal language. Jake carefully placed his violin back in its case. Does this mean music could help different species understand each other better? More than that, Dr. Foster said with excitement, it means we might have found the key to true galactic unity, not through trade or treaties, but through direct sharing of conscious experience. The room buzzed with conversation in dozens of different languages as the greatest minds of the galaxy tried to process what they had learned from a street musician's simple honesty. Jake woke up to the sound of alarms echoing through the guest quarters. Red lights flashed in the hallways as Commander Stone burst through his door, fully armed and wearing battle armor. We need to move now, Stone said urgently. The Dominion fleet just entered the system. They're demanding that you be handed over to them. Jake grabbed his violin case, still wearing his sleeping clothes. What's a Dominion? Dr. Clark appeared behind Commander Stone, carrying emergency supplies. They're a group of species that believe in genetic and cultural superiority. They see human influence as a threat to their control over other races. They ran through corridors filled with panicking aliens and humans. Through the windows, Jake could see massive warships surrounding Nexus Prime. The ships were black and angular, designed to look threatening. Ambassador Carter met them at an emergency bunker deep underground. Her usually calm face was tight with worry. The Dominion is led by General Vexton of the Hegemony species, she explained quickly. He's convinced that human music is some kind of biological weapon designed to make other species weak and controllable. Jake stared at her in disbelief. That's crazy. I'm just playing songs. Logic doesn't matter to them. Carter replied, they've declared that your music is an act of war against galactic stability. They want you arrested and human cultural activities banned throughout known space. Elder Zethkar entered the bunker with several other Valkyrie council members. Her usually calm expression showed something Jake had never seen before, anger. The Dominion has made a serious mistake, she said. They are threatening to destroy something beautiful and important. The Valkyrie will not allow this. Commander Stone checked his weapon as more alarms sounded above them. How many ships do they have? 200 warships, Elder Zethkar replied. They have also brought scientists who claim they can prove that human music damages alien brain functions. Dr. Foster arrived with a group of alien scientists Jake had met during the discussions. All of them looked worried but determined. They're demanding a trial, Dr. Foster said. General Vexton wants to prove in front of the Assembly that Jake's music is a weapon, not art. If he succeeds, they'll ban all human cultural expression and arrest anyone who's been affected by it. Jake felt sick to his stomach. This is all my fault. I never meant for any of this to happen. No, said Dr. Clark firmly. This is about fear. The Dominion has controlled other species for centuries by keeping them separated and suspicious of each other. Your music threatens that control by bringing species together. A tall alien with 4 arms entered the bunker. Jake recognized Speaker Vorth from the Assembly. The trial will begin in 6 hours, Speaker Vorth announced. The Dominion has agreed to present their evidence first. Then Jake Martinez will have the opportunity to defend himself and human culture. Ambassador Carter stood up. What exactly will Jake need to prove? That music is art and expression, not biological warfare, Speaker Vorth replied. If he fails, the Assembly will vote to ban human cultural activities and place Earth under Dominion supervision. Elder Zethkar moved closer to Jake. Young musician, you must understand what is at stake. If the Dominion wins, they will use this precedent to control all cultural exchange between species. Art, literature, philosophy, everything that makes civilizations rich and diverse could be labeled as weapons. Jake opened his violin case and looked at his old instrument. The wood was still scratched and worn, but now it seemed to carry the weight of the entire galaxy's future. What am I supposed to do in this trial? He asked quietly. Dr. Foster knelt down beside him. You need to show them what we discovered in our discussions. That music isn't about control or manipulation. It's about honest communication between conscious beings. The Dominion will bring their own scientists, Dr. Clark added. They'll show brain scans and claim that your music changes alien behavior in dangerous ways. You need to prove that those changes are positive, not harmful. Commander Stone checked his watch. We have 6 hours to prepare a defense that could save human civilization. Jake carefully picked up his violin and bowed. Then I guess I better figure out what I'm going to play. Outside the bunker, the Dominion fleet waited in orbit like dark clouds gathering before a storm. The trial that would determine the fate of cultural freedom in the galaxy was about to begin, and everything depended on one street musician and his ability to show the universe the difference between art and war. The assembly hall was packed tighter than Jake had ever seen it. Representatives from every known species filled the seats, while the Dominion fleet waited in orbit above. General Vexton stood at the prosecution table, his 6-foot frame covered in black armor that made him look like a walking nightmare. Jake sat at the defense table between Ambassador Carter and a lawyer named Nicole Adams who had arrived from Earth overnight. His violin case rested on the floor beside him, and his hands wouldn't stop shaking. General Vexton stepped forward to address the assembly. His voice boomed through speakers that made everyone in the hall wince. "Honored delegates," he began, "we are here because humanity has unleashed a biological weapon disguised as entertainment. This so-called music manipulates brain chemistry and makes species vulnerable to human influence." He gestured to a large screen that showed brain scans of various aliens. "Observe how human music changes normal thought patterns. The Valkyrie lose their logical reasoning. The Kraxan abandon their warrior instincts. The resonants become addicted to harmonic frequencies. Several aliens in the audience made worried sounds. Jake's heart sank as he watched some of them nodding in agreement. "This is not art," General Vexton continued. "This is mind control. Humanity seeks to dominate the galaxy not through military force, but by making us all dependent on their cultural products. They want us to become weak and emotional like them." The general played recordings of Jake's music while showing more brain scans. "Notice how these patterns match those found in addictive substances. Human music creates the same neural responses as drugs. This is chemical warfare through sound." When General Vexton finished, the assembly was quiet and tense. Jake could see doubt in many alien faces. Even Elder Zefkar looked worried. Nicole Adams stood up for the defense. She was young for a lawyer, maybe 35, with red hair and a confident voice. "General Vexton fears something," she said simply. "He fears what happens when different species understand each other. He fears unity because unity threatens his power." She walked to the center of the hall. "The general calls music a weapon, but weapons are designed to harm and destroy. Music creates joy, wonder, and connection. Can something that brings beings together really be called a weapon?" Nicole gestured to Jake. This young man didn't set out to conquer anyone. He was playing songs on a street corner to earn enough money for food. The fact that his honest expression touched so many different species proves something beautiful about consciousness itself. She turned to address the entire assembly. "General Vexton's own evidence proves our point. Yes, music changes brain patterns, but so does laughter, love, friendship, and every other positive emotion. Should we ban all joy because it makes us different from our baseline state?" Nicole nodded to Jake. It was time for his performance. Jake walked to the center of the hall, carrying his violin. A million eyes watched him as he prepared to play. He looked up at the Dominion delegation and saw General Vexton glaring at him with pure hatred. But then Jake looked at Elder Zefkar, who gave him a small nod of encouragement. He saw the Zephyrians glowing softly with support. The resonance hummed quietly in harmony. Jake closed his eyes and began to play. But this time, he didn't play Dance Monkey alone. As a familiar melody began, other sounds joined in. The resonance added their crystal voices. The Zephyrians created light patterns that danced with the music. Even some Kraxan warriors began beating rhythm on their armor. What emerged was something completely new, a combination of Jake's human violin with the musical expressions of 47 different species. The song became a symphony of galactic consciousness, with each species adding their own voice while remaining part of the whole. As Jake played, something amazing happened. General Vexton's own soldiers began responding to the music. Despite their training and loyalty, they couldn't help but feel the emotions flowing through the hall. Some of them started crying. Others began swaying to the rhythm. Even General Vexton himself stood transfixed, his hatred slowly melting away as the universal language of consciousness spoke directly to his soul. When the music ended, the silence lasted for 30 seconds. Then Elder Zethkar stood up. "General Vexton," she said clearly, "your own troops have just proven that this music is not a weapon. It is a gift, a bridge between minds that allows us to share the experience of being alive and aware." The Assembly voted unanimously to reject the Dominion's claims. More importantly, they established Jake as the first cultural ambassador to the Galactic Council, with a mission of promoting artistic exchange between all species. As Jake packed his violin, he smiled, thinking about how a simple street performance had led to the greatest collaboration in galactic history. The universe had just become a more musical place, and that made everything a little bit better.